everybody. This is Raul for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the long overdue honor and pleasure of getting the chance to talk with none other than Norm Stockton. Yay!
Honored to be here. Thanks, Raul.
As I was going to say, konnichiwa, Norm-san.
Konnichiwa.
Very great to talk. We kind of full circle, we had started this project about 2011 at a NAMM show when we said, we really should talk.
Unreal.
It's only taken us this amount of time to finally bring it to fruition, but as it said, it's never a bad thing. Waiting, the delay makes it all worthwhile over time, and especially now, Norm has this amazing project, Experience Grooves and Sushi, and we're definitely going to talk about that. But as always, Norm, tell us a little bit how you got started in music and on bass.
Absolutely. By the way, just quick aside, just really honored to be here for one, but also congratulations on Bass Musician Magazine and just what it is and what it's become, and all your hard work kind of uniting and serving the bass community internationally. It's awesome. So thank you. Yeah, my story is actually probably sort of similar to what a lot of other people would say was the main thing, which for me was Paul McCartney. And it wasn't that I was, I'm not quite that old. I was into the Beatles when the Beatles weren't really that popular with my age group at the time. But bottom line is that I grew up in a family with a prodigy level guitar player brother and a prodigy level piano player sister.
Oh, wow.
I'm the youngest of three. So all music was around our house, and they were doing amazing things as children. And so I remember, Japanese household, that all the stereotypes in this regard are probably true, that you got to take piano lessons, right? So I did take some piano lessons, and I just never really got into it. And I learned a couple songs I could still play, but I was no good. It wasn't until later, and as I was growing up, my brother would say, good guitar players are dime a dozen, good bass players will always have work, is what he told me. Mm-hmm. And so I was in my teens, and I really was into the Beatles, and I was one day there was an acoustic guitar, sitting around our house, and I took a couple strings off, and I started kind of playing the bass line by ear, McCartney's bass line, to a song called Shoulda Known Better. And it was like 1-1-5-5-1 kind of thing. And I was hooked, man. It was like, as soon as that happened. And then shortly after that, a friend of mine introduced me to Rush and Iron Maiden, and pretty soon I was just off to the races, yeah.
Got you. So did you pursue formal studies, or are you self-taught?
Totally self-taught. I didn't ever, study theory or anything. And my older brother kind of showed me a couple basic things, but yeah, I didn't really study theory or study music at all until about 10 years in. Mm. And I went and saw two sort of pivotal musical events within a couple of weeks. I saw the Chick Corea Electric Band with Patitucci and Weckl, and then about 2 weeks later, I saw the Stu Hamm Band. And between those two, it's like, man, at the time I was just, nothing wrong with prog. I was all about the prog, and I don't know if I would have said it verbally in those days, but I kind of felt like, yeah, I know what I need to know, kind of thing, Mm-hmm. Then I saw those two bands, and I just, all of a sudden, the overwhelming thing is, man, there's so much about music I don't know anything about, and this stuff is awesome, and that began my sort of motivation to study it, and those were two very, very important gates to see.
Absolutely. Well, and if nothing else, I think it's one of the realizations in life. As we get older, we certainly realize how much there is that we don't know. It's universal, whether it's music or other things. And it's part of, if you look at it from, I'll say, the glass half full approach, it's part of the joy of continuing to live, because you discover and learn new things. And you really should never stop learning. But musically speaking, that is a real eye-opener when you think you've got it all down, and then you just sit in front of somebody who just, smokes you. And you're like, okay, back to the drawing board or the woodshed.
Totally. Yeah, it seems like you're definitely selling yourself short. You're limiting your musical experiences, and it's sort of, you're kidding yourself because, really all you're doing is that if you have that perspective, you're just plateauing, you're not going to continue to grow. What you just said, absolutely 1000%. The more I learn, the more I study music, and the further I go in music, the more I realize I don't know, and that sounds cliche, but it really is true.
Absolutely. Well, and the other half of this, which is, I think, also kind of a geographic issue. If you think about, especially with the internet, there's so much more exposure worldwide. But before that, probably, if I were to say like the 60s and the 70s, so much of what we were hearing was controlled by the record labels or the radio stations.
Yeah.
And the fact that we would get like the Beatles, this was, if they weren't the popular things, you wouldn't hear them as much on the radio. So a lot of people would kind of go, okay, I've moved past that, and they're on to whatever is next. And by the virtue of all of this exposure, especially like with world music, and that's one of the things that always blows me away when you look at some of the Middle Eastern, in fact, the notes in between the notes, the different scales, the Arabic scales. You're just going, oh my gosh, there's this whole other thing, not to mention the percussive elements, the Afro-Antillian things, the stuff the Brazilians do. I mean, there's just a wealth of it. And so the radio stations, so much of what they were giving us, I always joke, it's the 3-chord approach where most of the pop songs have like 3 chords. And you go, well, that wasn't too challenging of a piece there, but it's what the folks like, and that's what they've got. And it wasn't until you heard pieces like with Prague, there's some exposure that you start going, oh my gosh, are these cats classically trained? What's going on there? Because there's just so much more intricate stuff, which will lead us to now grooves and sushi.
I want to piggyback on what you just said, by the way.
Sure.
And I also want to say that I thoroughly enjoy like 3-chord music, lots of 3-chord music as well.
Yeah.
As long as it's done well, but I feel like there's beauty in so many different things, and I think people tend to sort of, oh man, that stuff's boring, or oh, that stuff's complicated. It's like, well, yeah, but is it music? Is it musical? Mm-hmm. Is it artistic? There's 3-chord stuff that makes me cry, in a good way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love that. Yes, grooves and sushi. Yes, sir.
Yes. Well, and holding up my copy again, thank you so much for sharing. This is more than just an album. This is an entire experience, and we're going to have to hear a little bit more about this. But right now, on the music side, you assembled this amazing group of musicians, yourself included, doing an amazing job on the bass. High variety of feels and tunes and tempos, quite the platter of serving. And I'm going to keep coming back to food references here because it is tied in with sushi, and this is tied in with the experience because along with the audio, there is a 12-part video series to go along with it that allows us to be part of the behind the scenes, getting to know each of one of you as you're conversing and sharing the stories, and it is just such a rich experience that the only thing missing was some sashimi and some wasabi. On my end, I'm going, oh man, what a terrible time not to have sushi. But, if you plan it right and you've got your sushi ready, you could have all of the facets of the experience. So tell us about this project. How did this come about?
Yeah, thank you. You described it better than I can, I think. The short version is that when I first started thinking about doing another project, I don't know exactly the chronology, but some of your viewers might be familiar with a series that was on, I think it started on YouTube, but it was Daryl Hall from Hall & Oates, and he had something called Live from Daryl's House.
Oh.
And it was a brilliant idea. And it was, Daryl Hall had a massive house, he probably still does, and he would have his band in, and then he would invite like a current artist, the Hall & Oates were kind of bigger earlier in 70s, 80s kind of thing. And so he would have a current artist come in, and that would serve as the house band, and they would play tunes from this artist, but interpreted by this group of musicians. And then they would do some of the Hall & Oates stuff, but with the input of this contemporary artist. And it was really pretty awesome, really cool music. And then Daryl Hall would also invite in a local, really, amazing chef, and there'd be food, and then over a meal, they'd share road stories and the whole thing. And I remember thinking, man, this is really fun, My version of that would be different because the food would be sushi. Mm-hmm. And by the way, those who followed me for a while know that aside from the fact that I'm half Japanese and I was born and raised in Japan, sushi has become kind of part of my branding since my first record was called Pondering the Sushi. So it made sense. But then in addition, so a sushi-based, instrumental-based version of Life in Daryl's House is essentially what this was. And the idea was, well, I wonder if I could actually assemble musicians and track them in my house like Life in Daryl's House. So then there's the proof of concept thing. We need to bring in drums and actually see if we can get a decent drum sound in the living room kind of thing. And so we literally did that. I'm sitting in my studio, which is a disaster right now. What's framed is basically what is presentable. But on the other side of the wall, about 8 feet away, is my living room. And we kind of cleared it all out. We put down some rugs, and you can see it in the video. But the drums sounded great. And so it was like, okay, I think we could do this. And I was super grateful to find an amazing sushi chef at a local restaurant here who's gone on to big things, actually. His name's Kevin Garrison, and he was a musician as well. So he came in and he immediately was like, oh, yeah, I'm totally into this,
Yeah.
And so he rolled out the red carpet, and he brought everything here, and right at the island in the kitchen, he would make sushi and feed it to us, and which happened after we got done recording. You'd hear road stories, and it was really kind of, I was stoked that the concept was realized in the actual thing. But what it ended up being, there were 4 different shoots, 3 songs per shoot, and 4 different ensembles. So a different ensemble for each shoot. Musicians that had never played, some of us had worked together a little bit in the past, but the ensemble had never played together as a group, and we were playing songs that had never been played before. So it was kind of an ambitious thing, and really kind of demanded. The people I brought in were, stellar musicians, but it was dependent upon them to be able to just interpret on the spot, because we get set up, we get line checks, and then from the first pass, we're already shooting video and recording. The engineer was here in my studio, Pro Tools rig right there, and we were tracking it. So we ended up doing about 4 or 5, maybe sometimes 6 passes of each song. Most of the time we kind of pick, okay, that take 4 was the one,
Yeah.
And then, but because of the fact that we only had 2 or sometimes 3 cameras, we needed different angles. So we definitely needed to get multiple performances of the song. But yeah, it's kind of cool. The feedback I received is that people think it's cool. Mm-hmm. I thought it was cool and fun that you're actually watching improvised music and you're seeing that improvisation in the moment. Mm-hmm. Like you're watching a solo and it's like, yeah, that was when the solo was happening and we got it on video. Most of the time with a record, people are in the studio and they overdub 5 solos and you never really see it in the moment. And it ended up being a record, but it's a web series and the immersive aspect of people being able to kind of get to know these players, Mark Lettieri from Snarky Puppet, Chris Coleman from Prince, and just, Zorro and all these amazing, legendary players, Greg Bissonette, and hear, stories of playing with David Lee Roth or auditioning for Maynard Ferguson, and kind of just getting to know these people that you're watching play. It was fun. I'm really stoked that it came out better than I thought it was going to.
Well, and not to mention the fact that the music behind it, there's 12 pieces, 12 tracks on the CD. 11 of them are your own. So you had, and of course you're involved with the producing and engineering and everything else, but when it's your music and you're putting it in the hands of other people to do something with, that's a whole other big portion of it. So you kind of had the backbone, both with having written the music and, of course, on the bass end, which, again, it is, for those of us that love to hear the bass, there's a lot of very tasty, here we are back with food, tasty bass licks in there, But there's so many opportunities for all of these stellar musicians to shine. So it's not the just Norm show. It is like, no, there's a lot of turns where you go, wow, here's this, including one of my favorite things, and you don't hear it enough, bass clarinet.
Yeah.
Well, so if it's not Marcus that occasionally picks up his and plays it,
right,
and you're going, oh, there's a surprise, there's a bass clarinet. So, hearing bass clarinet in this mix of things, you're going, whoa, there, that was kind of nice. And different techniques, and also the range, your choices of the instruments, ranging up to your 7-string, all kinds of lovely.
Hold your fire.
Yes, calm down, everybody. Yes, he can play more than 4 strings, but it is chock loaded with so much creativeness, and again, a lot of upbeat but also reflective moments. So it is. Just like I said, it's a total experience, and definitely go episode to episode, find out all the details. There's just more than we can cover here, but we want you to keep wanting more. That's the tease right now. You should go, hey, I need to check this out. But
thanks, Raul. I appreciate that. And just to speak to your point, that's actually a big deal for me. I have a bazillion bass records, and I have the utmost respect for people that kind of have an album that it's really just it's a bass solo, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
But my own personal paradigm has always been, I much prefer, I like unaccompanied pieces, and the bass is a beautiful instrument for doing that sort of thing. And there are moments of that in Grooves and Sushi, but on all of my records, certainly the goal has been to create music, and something that's not just going to be an intellectual thing, but it's a heart thing. I want people to feel the music and feel something on an emotional level. When I listen to music, I'm looking for music that is going to move me on an emotional level.
Mm-hmm.
I think music is not just math, even though all the proggers are like, well, it primarily is. Like, there's certainly a mathematical component to music, but
yes.
But yeah, if it's just math, or if it's just gymnastics or pyrotechnics, I think it has very limited impact long term.
Sure.
And to me, the stuff that I share this quite a bit when I'm teaching is, the stuff that stays in my playlist is the stuff that moves me on a heart level. So that's certainly always the goal. What was really fun about this project, the people I was able to assemble, just fabulous musicians, and all of them capable of just playing a whole bunch of notes, but to a person also able to play a whole note and just milk it and make you weep, and that to me was really a special thing. When we were actually tracking the tunes, I'm literally hearing these songs for the first time as well, right? I mean, I demoed them up, but I'm now hearing actual gifted musicians interacting, listening to each other, and interpreting the written melody or whatever through their own musical lens. And there were a couple moments where I was like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna cry, I'm not getting emotional, but that's awesome." You're totally nailing what I was trying to say, And so, yeah, there's certainly, if you're a bass player, the goal was, and I hope I was able to achieve, some interesting bass lines. That was, I have nothing against creating interesting parts and maybe some stuff there's lots of notes. But if it's at the expense of, or in substituting for heart, then I'm just not into that, So hopefully it's both.
I'm hoping that people, as they listen to this, as we make clarifications, folks are going to listen to this and go, well, Raul doesn't like 3-chord songs, and Raul is dissing on solo bass albums. And the reality, I agree with you entirely. I appreciate each thing for what it is. And it kind of goes back to, like, in plastic arts, I can look at a black and white print and find the beauty in it. And I'm not going to go, well, they don't have enough colors, so, blah, blah, blah. No, it is the artist's choice, how they want to execute this. And I'm sure everybody knows in the bass world, especially the likes of Jamerson and all the Motown stuff, as they've constantly mentioned the spaces between the notes. So yes, There are people that can play a million notes per second, but there's also those that place those notes strategically. And again, your inspiration, Paul McCartney, was a great example.
Absolutely.
Of that exact concept coming from somebody who wasn't a bassist to begin with.
Right.
But in the placement, that's what colored each of those moments where you will go, okay, that's what gives me the feeling. And this is where, again, you feel it here, all the way through you. It's back to your spinal column up and down. It's the organic thing. And I relate so much to the musicality that, especially when people have lyrics, I tend not to hear the lyrics, which is a real shame because there's some great lyrics out there. But I tune in on the musicality, and fortunately, again, as I've mentioned, continue learning, I've come back and heard songs with lyrics and said, oh, that's what that was saying. Oh, wow, that was really deep. And it could be something I knew so well by the musicality. And the Beatles are a great example of that. When they came out, I was young enough. I was 4. And so I didn't understand a lot of what they were talking about, but the music spoke to me enormously. And Billy Joel's another great example. He's got some amazing compositions, but it wasn't till later that I heard the lyrics and I'm going, oh, now I can relate to that particular statement that he's making spoken. But again, it's always the music for me. So I do think there has to be that freedom of expression. Use what you need to do to give the feeling to it. Whether all you have is a Native American flute with a single pentatonic scale on it, you can do some spine-tingling work with it.
Oh, absolutely.
And it will be amazing. Now, as we talk about sound, how did you get your sound on this? And we do have a video of your whole gear collection. As we know, the term that can't be used when we relate to gear. But tell us a little bit about how you're getting your sound, Norm.
Technically, on this project, it was pretty much either running through my API A to D directly into Pro Tools, or I was using my A Designs Ready Tube DI into Pro Tools. But like you said, there's a video I did of all the gear that I used on Grooves and Sushi. I think I probably put that together before. There was quite a lapse between the third shoot and the last shoot that happened in April of 2021, but pandemic happened. So there have been a couple of things. I think I was using the 64 audio A12s that I used for the first 3 shoots had been replaced by A18s. But yeah, suffice to say that most of the gear that I'm using in Grooves and Sushi is in that video clip. So I won't get into too much detail, but most people that know anything about me know that I'm an MTD guy, Michael Tobias Design basses. I've been playing MTD basses since 1997 when I was 2. They're fabulous. I'm so honored and humbled that I have a bass that's the Norm Stockton Artist Edition bass that Michael designed together with Bill Bartolini. I've used Bartolini pickups forever. I'm pointing at this because it's sitting right next to me, but this is the signature model.
Yes.
And you can hear it in action. But yeah, also a longtime user of Gallium Kruger amplification and Groove gear. I'm going to go through and end up forgetting one person and feel terrible about it. So suffice to say that there's all sorts of different companies that I work with, and definitely I encourage you to check them out. I'm not one of those people that will endorse something because they throw me free gear. All of the companies that I work with are companies where I thought, man, that is awesome stuff. And then a relationship developed between the manufacturer and me, and pretty soon we have this symbiotic thing going. But the sound that I was getting was that. It was pretty much bass and the sinusoid cables into either an API A to D or Ready Tube DI. I did use a couple of different basses on this project. A lot of it was done with the NS Artist Edition MTD 5, but I also tracked one sort of jazz ballad with a Kala U bass with the LR Bags upgrade. Fabulous, fabulous instrument. I love the U basses. And then also there was a tune that was on my 7. But the 7 I've had for a number of years. I'm not a 7th string player.
Mm-hmm.
Although there's a funny story with that. when I first got the 7, I was on the road with a company called Maranatha Music. We were doing these workshops around the country. And when I first got it, I thought, oh, this is perfect. You know, I've got my normal bass here plus extra extended range. And so I can just travel with one bass. This is perfect. And so the next event came up and I went with just my 7. And, you know, there's lots of people that can pull this off, no problem. But for me, after that event, I thought, why on earth am I trying to do this? Everything is so much more work on a 7-string.
Yes.
Just simple slap stuff, just muting it and playing it cleanly requires so much more effort, you know? And I realized, yeah, you know, this instrument is a beautiful instrument. I love it, and I use it a lot for soloing and for playing melodies and some writing as well. But I use it for recording primarily. And I came home from that trip. I was like, yeah, this is going to be my supplemental instrument, and I'm a 5-string guy. So, but yeah, the 7-string, I play an MTD 735 on a song called Feel the Broken Glass on the project. It's really cool. For people that are familiar with my music, anything that sounds like, is that a guitar playing that solo or that melody, or it sounds a little bit bass-like, it's probably the 7.
Gotcha. Well, again, it's all the tools in the toolbox. So very, very cool stuff. One thing I don't want to forget to mention, and you touched on it a little bit, not only do you have this project going on, but you're an educator as well. And that was one of the early things that we'd been talking about was more from your educational efforts. So you have artofgroove.com.
I do, yeah. It's funny because my career, the career part of it started out as an educator. It wasn't, I was working with Maranatha Music, and I would be at these events and talking to a room full of bass players, and most of them were self-taught, kind of beginner to intermediate level with huge holes in their bag. And I remember thinking, man, it'd be cool if I could leave some resource that would allow them to continue to grow after today, this event. So that ended up being a couple of videos called Grooving for Heaven. The Maranatha events were targeting players in the contemporary church. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of like, it wasn't a comprehensive, everything you need to know about bass. It was more like, okay, so you're a converted guitar player or whatever, and you kind of know your way around the bass, but here's all the stuff that I would share with you if I could hang out for an extra couple days,
Yeah.
Coming up with a part, how to play a part, different styles of music, how to groove with drums, how to convey, phrasing, and sort of how to convey on an emotional level sort of thing, and a bunch of things along those lines. And that ended up, much to my surprise, it ended up taking off in the mainstream music world as well. And so I did another couple of videos. So there's 4 volumes in this series. But shortly after volumes 1 and 2 came out, people were saying, well, where's your music, So that's when Pondering the Sushi, I put that together because I guess I don't have any of my own music out there right now. So I was an educator before I was an artist, I guess is how you say it. But yeah, I have since really embraced that aspect of what I do, and I love it. At first I was kind of like, that was fun, but now I want to be an artist, and I really was missing. There's something about being able to impart something that helps other people grow on the instrument, and all these, I'm usually talking to a room full of people that have a passion for the bass
mm-hmm.
and a passion for music, but lack some of the knowledge on how to get to the next level, and so just being able to kind of illuminate and help them to get there, and then hearing back from people that they found it helpful and that now they're now able to do things that they couldn't do before, all of that, it's just awesome. So since then, I've, aside from just that, kind of launched a career doing clinics around the world, but in addition, I've been adjunct faculty at a number of universities. I'm presently the bass teacher at Biola University in LA, and it's one of my favorite things to do. I love it. The education part of it is cool. Artofgroove.com is my instructional website, and I'm kind of conflicted about sharing too much about it because it's in the process of being rebuilt. I'm probably realistically about 2 months away from launching the updated version.
Okay.
But yeah, all of my private teaching curriculum is there. The only thing is right now, I don't want to pull my web people off of the new project to try to patch up the old project. Everything about the current Art of Groove site works except the subscription page. It won't interact with PayPal anymore. So if people want to sign up, I just tell them to email me, normstockton@gmail.com. That's actually another funny, not really funny, haha, but funny story is that during the last season of 2021, I got my websites buried under a spam tsunami. So I'm using a Gmail account for my email until I can get that resolved. But yeah, normstockton@gmail.com. Anybody that's interested, and I'll set it up manually. But yeah, Art of Groove is now coming, and the new version is going to have instructional song tutorial clips from Grooves and Sushi, which the current one doesn't. So yeah, it'll be updated, and 60 lesson groove course. There's a whole bunch of material there.
Very nice. Well, see, and that ties into what I always like to ask is what plans there are for the future. So we know revamping the educational site. What other things do you have in the works?
You know, it's an interesting time, and I wonder if I'm not alone in this. This lockdown and pandemic season has been kind of a weird sort of reset. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like when I kind of reflect on getting back on a plane and doing clinic runs and shows and things, it makes me kind of stop for a second. It's like, wait, this seems like a lifetime ago,
Yeah.
And I think I'm gonna be getting back into that, but for some reason I'm a little gun shy right now because I don't have a company of people behind me that go and do all the work. If I'm going to do a clinic run, for instance, that is probably several weeks worth of work, just lining up all the logistics and getting all that together. And if a date gets canceled because of anything COVID related, it's a big problem. It makes the difference between the run being profitable and not. And so, not that it's all about money, but it is my vocation. It's kind of important that I'm going to be putting that kind of time in, that it repay. So the bottom line is that I am looking forward to getting back out on the road, but it probably won't be until the fall at the earliest, because I just kind of want to see the world. Not that the world is going to be normal. The world is a very bizarre state right now.
Yeah.
But some sort of normalcy returning to where the chances of people feeling comfortable congregating in a music store or in a church or at a show or in a home for a more intimate thing, it's like I want to just know that the chances are very, very minimal of that thing being pulled. But otherwise, yeah, I'm pretty busy just teaching. I do lots of remote teaching now, as well as I teach at Biola University, like I said. And I think there's also a little part of it where I'm still sort of recuperating from the hellacious amount of work Grooves and Sushi was. It was no joke. When I first was thinking about, so I could have everybody recording in my house, and hey, if we're going to track this live, why don't I just bring in some video people and we'll film it too, And I didn't have any idea what I was really describing. Even though I had experience doing videos, instructional videos, that is a different animal. And the level of work, because I do all my own editing, right? So it was just weeks and weeks of 50 to 60 hour work weeks, editing and mixing. I didn't do the mixing, but I obviously sat in the mixing sessions and kind of helped make all the decisions as a producer. So bottom line is, I'm still kind of taking a deep breath and enjoying the fact that I'm not putting in 60-hour weeks right now.
Absolutely. Well, and again, as you mentioned the pandemic, for musicians across the world, that's made them adjust and have to revisit how they're going to do things, what their approach is, when it's okay to do it again. We've seen a lot of false starts, and that is a real issue, that you'll have somebody that'll announce something, they have everything in the works, and then they can't, because the truth changes. And so it is cautious and it's prudent, and I know everybody's looking forward to normalcy, air quotes with the term. but we'll have to see, and I always reflect back to NAMM shows. One of the early adapters, Bubby Lewis,
absolutely,
one of your fellow MTD guys.
Yeah.
When he started wearing his mask at the NAMM shows, that I'd go, oh, that's a little excessive, but okay, it's Bubby. It goes with his leopard print and his, toe shoes and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But, we could see
he was a trendsetter.
Really? He was so ahead of his time. And so, life as we know it may have to be different moving along, and it may not be such a terrible thing, because as you've probably experienced at NAMM shows, the dreaded NAMthrax that we would get after being, packed in there for 4 to 5 days, you'd go, wow, I've never been so sick in my whole life. And if I would have ordered a mask, maybe I wouldn't have. But, I digress. Anyway, Norm, very excited. Grooves and Sushi, both audio, video, the experience. Go get your sushi before you watch this, so that you're not just sitting, drooling on your couch.
Yeah, join us for the sushi for sure.
There you go. Folks, and make sure you stay on top of all of this. The best place to stay on top of what you're doing, normstockton.com.
And groovesandsushi.com, which when the new instructional site launches, it's going to integrate everything under one roof.
Okay.
So it's coming, but yeah, right now groovesandsushi.com is probably the best place.
Okay. Excellent. Well, on that highlight, domo arigato somasu.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat about Grooves and Sushi. And yeah, God bless you. And I look forward to seeing you in person at an upcoming show.
So on that note, folks, you've seen him here, Norm Stockton on Bass Musician Magazine.